Good afternoon to everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We're going to be running through the Maximising Your Microsoft Licenses for Cybersecurity Protection. So we have Harry, who'll be introducing himself soon. We've also got David Ollerhead who'll be just doing a bit of an introduction. The agenda for today, so we'll just go through a few short introductions. Then Harry's going to take us through what the Microsoft stack looks like, the common license types, and then go through the compliance security part of the Microsoft offering, and then specifically looking at Sentinel, and he'll just share some key takeaways at the end. So I will hand over to David just to do a bit of an introduction.
So yeah, good afternoon, everyone. For those of you that don't know, I'm David Ollerhead. I'm head of sales at DigitalXRAID. I'm just going to give you a quick overview of DigitalXRAID as an organisation before we dive into Harry's piece. So from what keeps the roof over our head, we've got three pillars of teams. So we've got red, blue, and green team. Got red, blue, and green team. In terms of services in the red team, it's anything from an attack perspective. So from a red team perspective, yeah, it's everything from penetration testing, ethical hacking for web applications, infrastructure, mobile applications, everything from phishing, smishing, ishing, quishing, I think is a disgusting new term the industry's coined for QR code phishing. We do configuration reviews, CIS benchmarking, etc. And then from a blue team perspective, that's the jewel in the crown, and I won't steal Harry's thunder and say everything that we do with Microsoft today, but yeah, we run a 24/7 security operations center, which is CREST accredited and has been since the early days of DigitalXRAID. And then we've got our compliance pillar, which appease every 3 or 4 letter compliance god that you may have to look after each year. So whether that's ISO 27001, GDPR, PCI DSS, DSP toolkits rife at the moment, and every other thing that the industry does to try and put best practice and frameworks in place around security as a whole. And we also do cybersecurity maturity assessments against things like NIST, SOC 2, tabletop sessions, and instant response retainers from that team too. So I'll hand over to our Microsoft security expert at this point, which is Harry, and I'll let him take it away and dazzle you all.
Fantastic. So we've just added this slide in here just to give a bit of an understanding of the investment that Microsoft's put into their security stack and how far they've come. As I'm sure many of you are aware from prior, that Microsoft wasn't fantastic at their security stack. A lot of their tools were lacking in features, so they've invested a lot of money already and have sort of confirmed that they're going to invest another 20 billion over the next sort of 5 years. So there's going to be great improvements still to come. So a little bit about me. As David said, I'm a SOC engineer at DigitalXRAID. I've met some people on the webinar already, but for those who haven't yet, it's a pleasure to meet you. So my background, so I'm a Microsoft certified cybersecurity architect expert, and also a Microsoft certified Azure security engineer associate. So I hope that gives you some confidence in what I'm going to discuss next. So the Microsoft security stack. So there's lots of different running pieces that make that bring together Microsoft security stack. So typically, what we see on a ransomware sort of campaign, and this is sort of how it flows. So often we see it coming through from phishing mails, from websites that have been browsed to, at which point it goes on to sort of the endpoints where you've got exploitation and installation and command and control. From there, you also end up with account compromise, at which point the attackers attempt to privilege escalate and compromise the domain. The attackers will then attempt to exfiltrate sensitive data, and also backups and things will be deleted. Also, files will be encrypted on additional hosts. So as you can see along the bottom there, you've got your email, your endpoints, identities, workloads, and cloud apps. So how Microsoft fits into this is with Defender for Office, which is your sort of email security. So you've got your malware detection, safe links, safe attachments. I won't go over all of this as we'll be discussing it slightly later on. You've got your Defender for Endpoint for your endpoints, Defender for Identities, again for identities. For cloud apps, you've got Defender for Cloud Apps. And for your workload, you've got Intune/Azure Blueprint, which can be used to sort of protect your workloads. So common license types. So across all sort of customers and businesses that we speak to, these are sort of the primary license types that we see. So I won't go through all the costs, but this is what we really see. There's a huge disparity in cost between E5 and Business Basic, you know, with nearly 10 times the cost. So for some businesses, it's not feasible, but hopefully later on you'll understand sort of, you know, why it's so good and why it costs so much because of all the features you get within it. So as a bit of a key for each of the slides, what we'll be looking at is sort of these three keys here. So when you screen, everything's included within that license tier. Amber is where Microsoft gives you limited features, and red is where no features are included at all. So onto compliance. So there's going to be lots of Microsoft Purview this, Microsoft Purview that. For some organizations, they can find it really challenging to really understand exactly what it is that they need to do with Purview and how they can really utilize that, you know, to meet their compliance requirements. So what we've done is we've sort of brought together those as an easy bit of information for you. So just as a bit of an overview, you've got your Microsoft Purview Compliance Portal, which is your sort of centralized hub for managing compliance across your Microsoft 365 environment. So this is where you get to all of the ones we'll discuss later on. It's to get all the features, you have to have E5, but however, it will still show for others that are in a lower sort of license tier. So onto Microsoft Purview Information Protection and Data Loss Prevention. So on the left-hand side is all the features of information protection and data loss prevention. So we've kind of coined these two together as they kind of work hand in hand to really prevent information leakage. So with Purview, you've got sort of data classification, sensitivity labels, encryption, and access restrictions. So within there, you sort of, that's really where you're looking at sort of tagging files such as Word documents, Excel documents, etc. And what we typically see across customers is that, you know, they have a public tag for data that can be shared anywhere. They've also got company confidential, so that's data that can only stay within the organization. And with that, you can set up access restrictions so that only people within that organization can review that. And then we also see client confidential as well, and you can restrict that so that only people that have direct access through OneDrive or SharePoint can access those files. So within that, you've got limited features within Business Standard. You get some more sort of standard features within Business Premium and E3, and then you get the full sort of set of features with E5. So this is really sort of replacing the likes of Symantec Data Loss Prevention, Digital Guardian, and Force Point Data Protection. And on the right-hand side, we've got Data Loss Prevention, which is used to sort of identify sensitive data types, monitor and protect content in Exchange, SharePoint, OneDrive, and Teams, and you also prevent data from leaving the organization. So as I mentioned earlier, that kind of really works hand in hand with the information protection features of Microsoft Purview. And that's really for sort of automatically classifying data and preventing that leaving the organization. So where we typically see this deployed is for environments that either handle PII data, such as your national insurance numbers, names, emails, etc. And then what you can do is you can use Purview to sort of protect against that being shared. So within that, you also get basic features within the business premium and E3 licenses, and you get the sort of full set again with E5. So as we keep going through, you'll quite often see that you get a little bit of a taster with some of the sort of premium and E3 licenses. However, to get the full lot, you have to have E5. So with this, it sort of replaces the likes of McAfee DLP, Symantec DLP, and ForcePoint DLP. So I think it's key to say that really the way Microsoft handles DLP within their sort of environment is very different to how sort of a typical and sort of traditional data loss prevention tool would be. So the likes of McAfee, Symantec, and ForcePoint, they would all expect you to sort of deploy an agent onto the endpoint, at which point that will sort of track data and actions through there and attempt to block them. Whereas Microsoft's sort of solution is agentless, so you don't have to deploy anything, and everything kind of just runs in the cloud and automatically. Purview information governance. So again, it's a little bit similar to your information protection. However, this is more focused on sort of retention policies, so how long you keep the data for, also records management and disposition reviews. So really where we often see this fit in is for meeting GDPR. As you all know, GDPR sort of becomes the bane of most organizations' existence when you're struggling to deal with where data goes, how long you should keep it for. And Purview information governance is really what this is for. So you can tag files to automatically remove them after a set date. So this can really help you with your sort of compliance standpoint. So again, you do get limited features with a standard. You get a lot more with premium and E3. However, the full feature set is what you get with your E5 license. Purview, e-discovery, and insider risk management. So we've kind of brought these two into one slide, as I think this is really useful for when you're trying to sort of understand your sort of insider risk. So primarily with Purview e-discovery, you're sort of searching across Microsoft 365 data. You're able to place legal holds on files. You're also able to export them for review. Again, basic features with premium and E3, however, the full sets with E5. So this replaces tools such as Relativity, Xero, and Logical. These are licensed slightly differently. So with Purview Discovery, that's licensed based on users, whereas these other tools are based on agents. So typically for a sort of 100 user business, you'd expect to have maybe 3 agents with access to this tool. So that's sort of a potential saving of nearly £7,000 a year by consolidating it into an E5 license, which can sort of offset the additional cost of going to your E5. Insider risk management is your main portal for sort of detecting, investigating, and acting on sort of malicious insider risks. So this tool sort of uses machine learning to sort of understand your business profile and how things work within your organization. And it will detect sort of anomalous user activities and behaviors across your sort of 365 applications. And then it can also recommend actions to mitigate those risks. So that sort of replaces Proofpoint Insider Threat Management and DTEX systems. So there's a huge cost for DTEX, as you can see there. Moving away from using those sort of tools and onto your E5, you can save between 20,000 to 60,000 per year. So, if you were using DTEX already, replacing that with an E5, the E5 is only £1.30 more a user per month. So it can work out a lot cheaper, and you've got a lot more savings there. So really the reason we brought these together is to allow you to really detect insider risks. So recently we've had a customer who experienced a sort of rogue employee, and we've worked with them using the insider risk management tool and e-discovery to sort of understand what data had been accessed, what it was exactly that they were doing, and where we go from there. So that was really handy to sort of easily mitigate that risk. Now, purview communication compliance, it's a little bit of a strange one, and it's quite different to you know, any other sort of tool on the market, and this is really for detecting sort of inappropriate messages, be that Teams, email, stuff going on to SharePoint. So this can really be used for sort of customer facing businesses where you're, you know, dealing with a lot of customers day in, day out, and you wanted to make sure that people are upholding the professional standards. So within that, you sort of create policies to monitor communications, and if there's any detected, you can easily investigate and remediate those. Purview audit is a huge one for a lot of people, and it's something we've used in the past. So with this, you sort of bring in across all your user and admin activities across your 365 environment. So you can look through the audit logs with audit log search. You can also create alert policies to sort of detect when people are doing specific actions, and you can deal with those as needed. You also get activity reports to see, you know, sort of a timeline of what a specific user has been doing. So again, limited features you get with basic and standard. They're really just for looking at the logs. The standard features, you get sort of the alert policies, and then to get everything in, you have to have E5. So moving away from sort of purview and the compliance standpoint, we move swiftly on to the Microsoft Security Suite. So there's lots of different moving parts as part of the Security Suite, and they all sort of bring in together sort of centrally in the Defender portal. So I know a lot of people are aware of some features of these, but there's some features that we really want to nail home so you can understand and sort of get the most out of your licensing. So some of you may be aware of Microsoft Sentinel already. So that's Microsoft SIEM tool, which is all cloud native. So it all runs in the cloud. There's no on-premise requirements there. Useful for sort of security orchestration, automation, and response. It also has investigation features to allow you to pivot from an alarm and further dig into those. So out of the box, you have support for over 365 sources, and out of the box, it supports all the Microsoft tooling natively. And within that, you also get some benefits, such as being able to bring in audit logs and Defender alerts for no additional costs, so that it can be run very cheaply, but it also can cost a lot of money. So with your E5 licenses, it grants you an additional sort of 5 megabytes of ingestion per user per day. So for a typical 100 user business, that provides you an additional 15 gigabytes per month of ingestion, which will save you approximately £61 a month. So it doesn't seem like a lot, but you know, when in the grand scheme of things, it adds up very quickly. So Defender for Office Plan 1, that's really your sort of M365 protection. So there you're looking at email anti-phishing protection, and also Exchange Online protection. And it also includes sort of safe attachments and safe links, which will sort of stand between the user and the link they're trying to get to, and it will block them if it suspects they're suspicious. So this kind of replaces Mimecast and Proofpoint email protection, so they're a similar sort of cost. So it's between sort of 4,200 and 4,800 a year savings by migrating off of those and using the sort of Microsoft native tooling. So again, that's included with your premium, your E3 and your E5. To get the best out of Defender for Office, you need an E5 license, which includes attack simulation training, which replaces your sort of know before. And it's a fantastic tool used for phishing simulations, and training. You also get automated investigation and response. So, there's automated actions off the back of alerts that come through, such as removing emails and otherwise. It also sort of supports compromised user detection. And you also get the Microsoft threat trackers, which gives you sort of threat intelligence to sort of understand, the risks to your organization. So with E5, again, you get a potential cost saving of around 3,000 per year. So next we're on to Entra ID, which I know it is a bit of a strange one because they've recently renamed it from Azure AD. I'm still not keen on that, but I won't get into that. So there's lots of different features in there. The key features that I really want to pull out and are on the mind of a lot of organizations at the moment is conditional access. So we've done a lot of work with various clients to improve their sort of conditional access standpoint and really understand how to utilize the features. So if you're an all cloud organization, you have no on-premise AD, etc., you can utilize the sort of device compliance within Entra ID to block access from non-compliant devices. So that can prevent people logging into emails and Teams, etc., on their personal mobiles. You can also implement location restrictions for those organizations that, where data has to be kept within a certain location. It also supports single sign-on to other applications. So that's really where you're sort of looking at bringing in other applications into Entra ID. So that'll be your likes of your HR systems, any additional tooling you use. That can all be linked into single sign-on if there's one there already. So really where that sort of comes in is to replace the likes of Okta or G Suite for your third-party applications. And then another one that a lot of organizations don't understand and don't necessarily use is the terms of use. So this is where you can sort of put your acceptable usage policies, and if you have any others that you need people to agree to, you can utilize that and get sort of an audit log of who's approved it. And also it will block access until they've approved it, so they have to agree to those. It can also be useful for guest users. So you can target guest users and say, by using XYZ company's systems, you agree to all these, and you can follow those through. So Entra ID Plan 2 is your real big hitter where you get a lot of additional security features. Again, you can only get that with E5. However, you can purchase an add-on for any of your other licensing tiers to get these features. So really, the access reviews are vital for understanding who has access to what and sort of your privileged accounts, etc. You've also got an MFA registration policy, so you can use that to sort of target specific MFA requirements such as YubiKeys, Microsoft Authenticator. So if you're looking to move towards sort of a zero trust passwordless view, you can utilize that to migrate everybody off. A big one as well is privileged identity management. So that's Microsoft's just-in-time access. So it's really useful for sort of your global admins and otherwise. When they need global admin access, they have to request it. That can either go off for approval, you can require justification, and you can also require a ticket. So if you have a ticketing system where you sort of control change management, you can include that as part of the process. So you better understand what your admins are doing. As part of Entra ID Plan 2 as well, you do get risk-based conditional access policies. So those can be utilized to sort of understand, risky sign-ins, and that could be something from the user signing in from a new device in a new location. Let's block that access and have them reset their password. So Defender for Cloud Apps is a very unique thing that Microsoft offers, and a lot of people don't really understand exactly what it does. So as I mentioned, nothing in the industry really works the same way as Defender for Cloud Apps. Many of the tools contain some features, but none quite compare like for like. So Defender for Cloud Apps is really useful for your shadow IT discovery. So, nowadays it's so easy to sign up for a SaaS service. with a credit card, and there's no real way of understanding that, as a lot of these sort of user guided setups. You can also use this for a big one, which a lot of companies are concerned about at the moment, is for understanding usage of AI tools. So, your ChatGPTs, your Claude, you can easily detect and monitor those, and even block them with Defender for Cloud Apps. It also works hand in hand with data loss prevention to sort of protect you from data going to third-party applications. You also get compliance and information protection, which will enable you to really understand the tool's compliances. So say you were looking at someone using a HR tool, and you're not really understanding, is this safe for use? You can see what sort of compliance things they held up to, such as ISO, GDPR, SOC 2, and many of the other sort of compliance ones. It also has integrated threat protection to defend, to detect and block risky cloud apps. So if you're seeing, someone signed up to something with their 365 account, this could be automatically blocked if it's sort of suspicious. Oh, sorry, I meant to mention this is only on E5 as well. Defender for identity. So this is really looking for your sort of on-premise domain controllers. So this is used for on-premise AD, where your sort of identity threat detection comes in. You also get the benefits of having lateral movement path detection, so you can sort of detect for compromised accounts trying to pivot to a privileged account or otherwise. You do also get security posture assessments within that, so you can really understand, your sort of security of your AD, whether you've got, groups that are overprivileged and otherwise. This also integrates natively with Defender XDR, which is the holistic portal for Microsoft Defender. You also have incident investigation. So when you've got a compromised account, you can easily pivot to sort of investigate those users. And also it includes automatic response, so you can easily disable users on premise from the cloud. Defender for endpoint. A lot of organizations are starting to utilize Defender with the trust in Microsoft going up. Defender for endpoint plan 1, to be brutally honest, is sort of a basic sort of anti-malware, antivirus with a centralized management sort of overview. So this does support all of your platforms. So you've got Mac OS, Windows, iOS, and Android. They all sort of natively work and are able to be integrated. This also integrates with cloud apps as well. So you can use that to block applications. You also get your enhanced attack surface reduction tools. So a lot of these are sort of now being used in part of the secure score. And these are really giving you additional protection against the likes of Adobe PDF, where you can sort of implement restrictions so it can't spawn child processes. You can also enforce sort of LSAS protection and otherwise. Within Defender for Endpoint Plan 1, it is a manual response action. So if something is detected, you would have to manually respond to it and manually say, let's isolate this device. Let's run an anti-malware scan and otherwise. Again, as I mentioned, support for mobile devices. So you also have your Android and the iOS. That works by porting all your traffic out to through their sort of proxy. And then you can detect sort of malicious activity there. As part of it, you also get tamper protection so that users and admins shouldn't be able to disable Microsoft Defender. As out of the box, it's fairly easy to disable it. You just have to flick a switch. And also you get web content filtering. So this is really where you sort of are looking at saying, I don't want my staff accessing gambling. I don't want them to access, explicit content and otherwise. So there you can block those categories explicitly. Microsoft's always updating those as well, so they're up to date. And you're really covering all those that you don't want sharing. So this would sort of be targeted at more of a anti-malware, antivirus type thing. So this replaces your sort of McAfee endpoint security and your Bitdefender Gravity Zone business security. So again, these are fairly cheap. They're only £2 per user per month. But again, it adds up. So over the year, you know, you're saving roughly 2,400, which is huge. Defender for Endpoint Plan 2 is you're all singing and all dancing sort of suite. So this has all the features of Defender for Endpoint Plan 1. However, you get your full EDR features along with automated investigation and remediation. So where I was talking on the last one, where you'd have to automatically isolate device, this can automatically isolate those for you, and then you can sort of remediate those on your own time. This also integrates advanced hunting, so where, you know, you're seeing 0 days popping up, you can easily look across your entire suite and use those sort of rules with KQL to investigate and really understand, you know, what's been happening and whether you've been a victim of that. It also integrates threat analytics, which again is similar to the one I was talking about earlier, where you get Microsoft's threat intelligence. So they give you sort of all the key bits and bobs that, you know, are really vital for understanding what the threats to your organization are. So Defender for Endpoint Plan 2 really replaces you know, your big hitters like CrowdStrike and Sentinel-1. CrowdStrike's 14 per user per month for Falcon Pro, and Sentinel-1 is around £3 per user per month. So you could be saving anywhere from 3,600 to 16,800 a year. So that's me done on all of the security suite. So I think the key takeaways for me is that there's a significant decrease in cost by consolidating. You know, when you're replacing your malware, your email security, your on-premise security, and also your compliance, you know, you can really get massive cost savings by utilizing E5. If you're on E3 already, you know, if you went to E5, the cost of that uptake will be wiped off by the tools you get. E5 is the only Microsoft license that comes with everything out of the box. And really, I think that's where they're trying to push people towards, is that full stack security suite where everything's kept on site. You also have the simplicity in having everything centralized. So a lot of the stuff all goes into either the Purview portal or the Defender portal. And also with the utilization of Microsoft Sentinel, you can bring both of those in to that one single pane of glass, which can be really useful for easily, you know, detecting and responding to threats. On to questions. Any questions from everybody?
Thank you so much, Harry. That was all amazing. We have had a few questions in already, which I can start with, but if anybody else has any questions they'd like to ask, there's a Q&A on the platform, so drop the questions in. We'll try and get through as many as we can, or all of them if we can. There are a few other questions around. So one of them is, if I move everything to Microsoft, I'm worried about my cloud data charges if I'm using Sentinel. Do you have any advice?
Yeah, so as I sort of mentioned earlier, you know, Microsoft Sentinel can be extremely costly, and you have to be really mindful of what it is exactly you're bringing in. So out of the box, Microsoft does support a lot of free ingestion. So as I mentioned, you get your Azure audit logs, you get sign-in logs, and you also get Defender alerts. We've also run some proof of concepts with some clients that we've sort of gone in and they've gone, well, we've had a proof of concept already. It's cost us a fortune. Why is that the case? And we've gone in and understood, you know, the necessity of bringing in all of this information and whether it's really required. And from there, we've sort of stripped that back down, simplified it as they were sort of duplicating data that was being ingested, and looked at using some of the sort of Defender for servers to replace the necessity for bringing in security logs directly from the devices.
Perfect. And then, is this a similar area? What are the costs for running Sentinel with Business Pro licenses?
So Microsoft Sentinel, it's a flat ingestion cost per gigabyte. So as I mentioned earlier, with your E5 licenses, you get that additional 5 megabytes, but with any of the others, you don't. So anything outside of those free ingestions is charged at, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, I think it's around £3.50 per gigabyte, something around that mark. I could be wrong. They're ever changing it. So yeah, that's how the sort of ingestion cost works out.
Great. And then there's two similar, I guess, questions. One, is there a benefit to having only a couple of users on E5 with the rest of the business on Business Premium? I.e., would having some additional features for some users be of any benefit, or is it all or nothing approach for E5? And the second is, how do you decide who in the business needs E5 licensing? So similar area, only a few admins have E5 at present, with the rest on E3. However, some of the functionality seems to be available to all users. For example, cloud app discovery and management.
Yeah, it is a really tricky one. So what I tend to suggest for people is to utilize E5 for their sort of admins and sort of key users. With the admins, obviously, you get the privileged identity management. So you've got the just-in-time access for global admin and other admin privileges. Also, sort of key individuals within the business. So the likes of your CEO and the CTOs, sort of those kind of people for that additional protection. I get what you're saying about the licensing, unlocking everything if you have one. One thing to be very mindful is, I know Microsoft are quite hot on their sort of license audits. I've not experienced one, touch wood, as of yet, but they do utilize those to really understand that you're using the correct licensing. And if you're not, they can then try and charge you additional. So it's just something to be aware of.
Great. And then, would you recommend this stack in a mixed Windows and Mac environment?
Absolutely. Microsoft's done a lot of work on sort of developing Mac OS sort of integrations. So it's, it's supported in Intune, it's supported in Defender, and obviously all your 365 applications are natively protected anyway. So yeah, I think it's a great tool to utilize. If you've got the licenses anyway, go for it.
Great. And with regards to Purview, is it fully compatible with PDF now, similar to O365 Suite?
That is a great question. I believe so, but I'm not 100% confident.
Okay. And then the last one that we've got in for the moment, unless anybody else has any that they want to add in, I'm concerned about putting all my eggs in one basket with Microsoft. Is it safer to use different suppliers?
Yeah, I think it's on everyone's mind at the moment, off the back of what happened with CrowdStrike. I think it's fair to say that Microsoft's had a good track record so far with their suite of tools not going down. However, no one's obviously impenetrable to that. But in my opinion, I think bringing it together obviously gives you a lot more benefits than sort of, the risks of something not being detected. And the way they all function together, it gives you that whole sort of end-to-end security suite.
Lovely. Unless there are any questions that will come in the next few seconds, I think that's us done. Thank you very much, Harry. Thank you, David, for the intro at the beginning. And thank you, everyone, for joining us this afternoon. We'll see you all soon.
Thanks so much, everyone.